Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Chalk and Squawk. Today, our topic of discussion is going to be bullying in the classrooms.
Oh, well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird. Bird's a winner. Well, a bird. Bird is a winner. Well, a
By a show of hands.
Do you want me to say it?
Raise your hand if you've been bullied.
Yeah. Oh my god. Lovely. So, how have those experiences shaped your upbringing? Knowing a person's been bullied or being bullied?
Witnessing it, too, we could say.
Yeah, sure, witnessing it.
Yeah. You can start. You can start. Yeah, you start.
When I first came to the U.S., I was relentlessly bullied. This one girl, Zoe, I remember you.
Drop that name.
You'll drop her address.
Yeah, Zoe. Huh?
Yeah,
You
Zoe.
watching this? Got a bone to pick with you.
Zoe.
There were a lot of other things going around because I just moved to a new country too, so I was already kind of feeling out of place. But what happened to me personally was that these two girls befriended me, and I was like, oh yeah, I have friends, and then did a complete 180 a few months in once they kind of had me hooked and were so incredibly mean to me that my mom had to get involved with them. And it thankfully never got to a point that I didn't want to go to school, but it didn't make it an enjoyable experience, I guess, knowing that I was going to be in a place where I was going to feel more uncomfortable than I already was because of other things, and it kind of just made me more of an outsider than I already felt. And I don't think any child should have to wake up every day and be like, well, I'm going to have to plan for X, Y, and Z person doing X, Y, and Z to me, and I don't know. I've mentioned in previous episodes that education is a right granted to every child, and for anything to have a negative impact on that beyond control, I guess, is how do I phrase this? This is not making any sense. Every child deserves to have a good, healthy, safe schooling environment, and for bullying to be in any of those environments is bad, is wrong, is horribly phrased, but that's what I thought.
Do you wish your teachers or your schools did anything different to help you support you?
Or what supports did you have initially?
The thing is, I don't even know if we went to any of my teachers or the school itself. It was kind of just I didn't know that it wasn't normal, I guess, because in Germany, I schooled there, everyone was really mean, and so that kind of teasing and rudeness was something that I was used to there, but I realized really quickly that it didn't translate into an American school, which is why I don't think I told anyone, because we kind of just handled it on our own, which is why my mom got involved, and she just took matters directly into her hands, because we didn't know what was going to happen if we did get the school involved, kind of thing. So I guess there could always be more measures on what a school's policy on, because I know that everyone says zero tolerance, but what exactly is a school going to do if something like that were to arise,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think especially in today's world there's many different types of bullying, not only just the verbal abuse, but also, there's physical and as well social media abuse. There's many different ways that people could be, rude or mean in so many different outlets and facets. So it is kind of hard on the school system to kind of monitor that and also restrict it, because there's a lot of things that happen in school as well as outside of school. Granted, there are programs and zero tolerance, but that's a good question. What does zero tolerance mean? And what does it mean to us? Well, how could we envision that as future teachers? Does anyone want to take a stab at that?
I feel like zero tolerance can be tough because you do have to give bullying kind of an operant definition. Because, when I say bullying or I hear bullying, I'm thinking about very stereotypical, give me your lunch money, loser, pushing, that sort of thing.
That's very rarely what it actually is.
That's not really a thing anymore, at least in my own experiences. Witnessing bullying and kind of also somewhat experience it, it's never been like that. So I think finding a new definition of what bullying means too, because a lot of times in these zero tolerance schools, bullying will happen and not be addressed because it's like, oh, they're just being kids, or like, oh, like it's just like, you know, what high school girls do, this, that, the other, when in reality it is bullying, or even if it isn't, it's still wrong and it should be addressed. And I think that's where it gets tricky with zero tolerance policies. But on the other side, I feel like zero tolerance policies, like, you know, if you get caught being a mean, being a bully, whatever, you're automatically suspended, expelled, whatever. It also limits growth coming from the aggressor, for lack of better terms. You know, and like we've seen in like some different like classroom type models of like restorative justice. I forget the other ones, but like kind of like how talking it out can sometimes be effective. I say sometimes, I don't mean all the time, because I know there have been instances where schools have tried it, it doesn't work, it continues. But I do think that also has to be kind of taken into account, and kind of you have to figure out where do you draw the line. And me personally, I don't know where I draw the line yet. Yeah.
I think that arguably the number one cause of modern day bullying is social media. And if we're talking zero tolerance, I think it's hard to argue that any sort of handheld device or anything like that has its place in the classroom. We've had plenty of conversations about phones in schools and if they have a place for any sort of reasons, emergencies, things like that. But when it comes to bullying, if I'm going to think of just like basic instances of bullying that I've experienced through myself and other people throughout the years, most of it came rather inside or out of school through some sort of online issue or group chat, things like that. As for something else that I think can help with showing that your school has zero tolerance for bullying is making sure teachers are trained adequately to jump in front of the problem when it comes to bullying, instead of waiting till it happens and then dealing with it. Something that pops up in my mind immediately is, it's not necessarily an instance of bullying, but it shows that my teacher cares deeply about their students and any issues that might arise in his classroom, is two kids that are oftentimes best friends. One, it's like quiet kid, more talkative extrovert kid kind of friendship, and the extrovert kid seems a little bit bossy sometimes while the other kid kind of follows him around. But recently I think the bossy kid's getting a little bit too bossy and the quiet kid's starting to distance himself. And every time the extroverted kid is like, oh, be in a group with me, let's do this, let's do that, he's just like, nah. And it makes the other kid really sad, you know? And although I don't know if that's bullying, it is an instance of, okay, now my teacher is going to have a conversation with each of them each of them now to make sure to just talk about how they're feeling about each other and how they cannot let this escalate in any other ways. Because, I mean, you're in a classroom in an elementary school setting where these kids are with each other 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. There's going to be some beef, there's going to be some tea that you're going to have to talk to your students about if you don't want there to be more issues arise. Because the kids are going to find their best friends, and then they're going to be with them 6 hours every day, 5 days a week, like as much as they're with their family, and that's a lot. That's a lot to be with the same people over and over again. And as a teacher, you need to be adequately trained in order to prepare for when those things are going to arise and how you can prevent it and anything you can do to do that. Yeah.
I want to go back on what Kelly said earlier about the aggressor, I guess, and not automatically going to like an expulsion, because I feel like something that a lot of schools also forget, or teachers sometimes, is that, especially with younger kids, a lot of them will just say and do what they see at home. So if we aren't, I guess, not that we would see the side of both things, but also take a look into that aggressor's home life and how they are as a person and kind of what they are being surrounded by, because of exactly what Kelly said. We're limiting growth, and especially if this is a kid's way to call out for help that they are repeating and saying and doing all these things that are quite horrible, it's a pretty obvious sign that something is wrong, because I would like to think that very little children are just mean just to be mean. I think a lot of it comes from something because they haven't, other than that, they wouldn't know how or why they're doing something like that.
I just wanted to say, like, Google defines bullying as repeated aggressive behavior that involves a real or perceived power imbalance and includes actions intended to cause harm or distress. And I think the two key points of that are the power imbalance, or like perceived at least, and the intent. And I think a lot of times, like, sometimes, I mean, myself included, like, sometimes I'll say something kind of mean, and I realize, like, way after the fact, like, oh my god, that was mean, and I definitely hurt their feelings. And I think that alone can't really be, like, you know, defined as bullying, you know, but also with the power imbalance, like, you know, obviously kids are going to have their own social hierarchy. That's just kind of how we are as humans. But I think when the two come together is when things get tough, and I think that is a good definition of bullying in general. Yeah.
And repetition. Like,
yeah,
one
the
off
repetition.
comment
Yeah.
is, that can be addressed in a moment. If it's, like,
An everyday
repeating,
thing.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also important too, like, as teachers, depending on obviously which age group you're in, to let the kids have a chance to figure it out themselves. And maybe you can prompt them a little bit with, like, a, hey, if you don't like how she's talking to you, maybe say something, that sort of thing. And it can be like a whole class, like saying, like, hey, if you don't like how someone's talking to you, you can say something to them, say something to me after if you want to. Or it can be, like, direct, like, one-on-one talking. But I do think it is obviously good to give the kids a chance to kind of, like, you know, figure it out themselves with little adult intervention, because I do think as teachers, sometimes our presence can be intimidating. And so being mindful of that and letting the kids figure it out themselves, because it's also a good life skill to have. You know, being confrontational, not in necessarily a bad way, but in, like, a, I don't like how you're talking to me, I don't like how you're treating me, please stop. You know, that sort of thing is definitely a good skill to have when you become, you know, teenager, adult. Do you want to add anything?
I think bullying is such, like, a complex issue. It really can't be defined in one manner, especially as kids age. Like, bullying in first grade, you might see it happening, especially as a teacher, you might see it happening right in front of you. But as kids get older, the students that are bullying other people are much better at hiding it and how they do it. It might not be as a completely wide open thing that's happening right in front of you. It's more a lot of, like, microaggressions tend to happen a lot. I know when I moved to my new district, I experienced a lot of different type of, like, racism bullying through, like, verbal, through property destruction, social media, all that type of stuff. So it's really, in the moment, the teachers really don't know what's happening, because in middle school you're switching classrooms, so stuff happens in the hallways that teachers can't be everywhere, adults can't be everywhere. It's just the nature of bullying. Social media, like Brady said before, is such, like, an evolving thing that it's like you can make a fake account, say something, and then there's no way to trace it back to you. So I think as teachers and future educators that the best way to talk about bullying is not necessarily try to stop it, because I personally don't really think it's actually ever going to end, because people are going to be people, but find ways to help the people that are getting bullied seek help before they do something they're going to regret. Whether it's retaliate, because usually the person that retaliates gets caught, they don't get away with what they're going to do, they're the ones that get in trouble, and then now they're getting in trouble for being bullied, and that does not help anyone. So
Was there anything specific you wanted, like, you wished your, like, teachers or, like, school staff did?
honestly, just been more observant in general, because I feel like a lot of the teachers I had kind of just overlooked it and be like, oh, they're just boys. But in reality, I knew these kids for a month, so I was just a brand new person to them, and they had no idea who I was. And teachers might not know that, because since it's all new teachers, we're new students to all of them, but there was no relationship. So finding the correct, like the right balance between being like controlling over students but also being observant of what's happening in the classroom or outside of the classroom, I think that's really big. But also there is, if you're really close with your friends, you might have like banter with them with an outsider might see it as bullying, but it's really just how you guys communicate. And I think that definitely needs to be defined as like, there's a time and a place where bullying is happening, and then there's a time where it's not bullying, it's how people talk to each other. But I think that's such a hard line to find, especially in a school setting, because I know in high school I might be more like aggressive, like verbally with one of my friends, but I know they know they're taking it as a joke, as opposed to someone who I talk to never and I say the same thing to them. They might not know it's a joke, they might take it very seriously, and you don't know how they're going to internalize that and move on with their day. So
I think what Makai said is really important about the relationship. I think in our perspective as teachers, that relationship with our students is one of the greatest things that we could do to prevent bullying. I know it seems kind of, maybe not forthright, but maybe even a little, I can't think of any words, so we're going to skip that. Really should have teach. Yeah, I think it is detrimental to our students' development, because I think as teachers, and I hate to say it, but we do put kids in boxes in terms of the kids who do well in school and the kids who are really quiet, or kids who are etc. And I do think that does happen to bullies. I remember one of my friends at primary school, I mean, looking back at it now, he wasn't the most behaved or academically sound kid, but he was one of my closest friends at that time. And I remember vividly from teachers, my parents, and even some other friends that you shouldn't be around this guy because he is a negative influence. But I saw more than what they saw. And I think even that own box that they put him in kind of made it a self-fulfilling prophecy to an extent, where he believed that the only way that he could be is by doing those actions, those negative actions. So I do think knowing our students, understanding, their background, their culture, their history, as Hannah said, is important, because at the end of the day, bullies are just students. They're just people. And like all people, we all want to be understood and known. And it's kind of hard to do that, especially when everybody says that you are the bad guy. And they're not. They're just kids. And they don't know right from wrong. And that's where our job as teachers come to play.
I have something to add. I was just thinking about my own experience in like middle school and high school witnessing bullying and how it kind of affected me. So I know in high school, like for the most part, bullying wasn't really a thing like during school hours. I remember my senior year, this kid like commented on my friend's Instagram post like some crazy stuff. Like, hold on, I like asked her about it last night, but because I knew we were gonna film this episode. He said he commented on like a 2021 recap post that she posted saying 21 was better when I didn't know of your existence. And then you're gonna have to bleep this out, but he said he called her a out of nowhere. Like I knew this kid because we're from like the same small town in our school district, and but we did not cross paths. Like my group, like my friend group and his friend group, like we just did our own things separately. We went to a very big high school, so like that wasn't like, we just weren't like, it was out of nowhere, I guess. Sorry. And like everyone's like, it happened to a couple other people as well, and like everyone's consensus was just kind of like, that's weird. And then they moved on because they were just kind of like, okay, he's not involved with our community, our friendship, he's not in our classes, so who cares? And I think that's a good mindset to have. Obviously, it's a mindset that is learned, but where it comes into a problem, like especially as teachers and, other things, is like when I was in high school, I played lots of sports, as I've previously mentioned, and on my lacrosse and field hockey teams, there was a lot of homophobia. And I wasn't out in high school because of the homophobia. It made me very, very scared to be open about, myself and others. Or, well, myself, not others. But there were other openly gay people on my team. And they were often, like, the target of kind of like what Makai said, more so microaggressions than anything else. And my coach did not care, and I think, I'm not gonna speculate, but I think he definitely saw it, and he definitely chose to ignore it, and because the girl who was the target of the bullying was like, yeah, whatever, but it still affected me because I was like, oh my god, I can't tell these people I'm gay because it's gonna make everything weird, it's gonna ostracize me from my team and that sort of thing, and I just didn't want it. And I think, again, kind of like what Justin was saying with the whole you gotta build the relationships and community inside your classrooms and that sort of thing. Even though a lacrosse team isn't necessarily a classroom, it is still a community, and because of that, having those relationships is really important. I didn't have a good relationship with my coach whatsoever, and it led me to until college, I was really scared of being open just because of that, what I experienced in high school and stuff. And it took having a coach who actually cared and wanted to create an inclusive environment to me being okay, you know what, even if these people know, my teammates know I'm gay and they have a problem with it, I know that my coach has my back. And having that sort of relationship with your students, your athletes, whatever, is so critical to prevent bullying and also reduce any harm that is causing. Because you know what, if my coach and I had a good relationship in high school and I was like, hey, I don't like how they're talking to blah blah blah, or even if the girl who was the target talked to him and he was like, you know what, we're gonna try this, whatever, and had some consequences for the people who were saying these horrible things, it probably would have gone differently. I would have been more comfortable within myself. I don't know if you guys...
I'm gonna add on to what you just said, especially in sports, because you also have to remember that although we're talking about bullying in the schools, coaches can also bully players in a way that's extremely overlooked, especially by parents, and it's really a big issue, because as a player, especially if you're not anything below high school, really, there's a very low chance, even once you're in high school, that you're going to stand up to your coach, because when at the end of the day, if you love playing a sport, they determine how much you get to play it. And it sounds horrible, but that's that's how it works, and that's how sports are going to work, probably. And I don't really know if there's a way to fix it unless you make every coach perfect. But a lot of these old-fashioned coaches don't. It's either their way or the highway.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's hard to, because there is an actual power imbalance within a coach and their athlete. Not just a perceived oh, this person's more popular than me, whatever. It's genuine, this coach has more power over me. So I think that's where it can be hard, and
Anything you want to add, Brady?
Yeah, to wrap it up.
You guys just talk so much.
Sorry.
I'll talk about two things they said that I don't necessarily disagree with, but I'll put a little bit of something to think about. I guess just with Kelly, she said that to an extent, there wasn't a lot of bullying in school hours. There's always bullying to some extent somewhere. You walk down the halls, you're going to see someone making fun of someone, whether it's playfully or not. And as an outsider's perspective, you have absolutely no idea how each person is feeling about said interaction. Maybe the bully is doing it because they feel the need to be in control in some way. Maybe the person getting bullied is only taking it because they want to be part of the friend group. And that's kind of their role in the friend group. I have some experience with that. But all friend groups have a sense of hierarchy. Even if you think your friend group's the exception, I promise you, to an extent, there is some sort of hierarchy there, where one person feels more important than another one. Maybe someone's the group leader. It's always going to be there. And because of that, it often causes some sort of bullying. And I do agree that there's only so much you can do about that as a teacher. But I think it's something, if you catch a little bit in the younger years, you can do a little bit more about it by what I said earlier, just kind of jumping in front of the conversation and building these kind of making way to have these conversations with your student whether it's I'm going to sit down with these two kids who are beefing a little bit and have them talk through it and be a bit of a mediator there, or it can just be talking with them one-on-one and talking about what they can do better to be a better friend or to maybe treat people with a little bit more respect. And then Makai said something like 10 minutes ago. He was talking about how some kids just communicate through kind of making fun of each other a little bit. And I've done that my whole life. And I don't disagree with him on that. And I believe that if that's a way you prefer to communicate and your friends are also on board with that, that's absolutely something you can do. But for me, in my classroom, and you guys are welcome to disagree with this if you want, if I ever witness any of that happening in any friend group in my classroom with any classmates, I am going to cut that off because I do not want that happening in my classroom when I'm never going to be 100% sure what the students are comfortable with from their peers. Even if you have that conversation with them and like, oh, are you sure it's okay that they make fun of you a little bit, that they say this? There's a very good chance they're not going to be honest with you. And I think that that's something to be very vigilant of as a teacher. Is the kids aren't always the kids, they want to put out this cool guy persona, but all kids are just kids, and on the inside they're emotional creatures who feel very deeply just like we do, and it's something to keep an eye out for. But yeah,
close them.
All right, so thank you for tuning into this episode of Chalk and Squawk, where we spoke on bullying. I think we had some really good talking points today, and we'll see you guys next time, probably in another new environment.
Oh, well, everybody's heard about the bird. Bird, bird, bird. The bird's a winner. Well, a bird, bird, bird. Bird is a winner. Well, a